Hello and welcome to Outlaw Bookseller with me, Stephen E. Andrews, writer, bookseller, collector, and I'm here at Caldicot Castle, Wales, which is basically a gigantic free creche. But we need to put away childish things because it's time to talk about the correct reading order, or my version of the reading, for people new to the Elric of Melnibone cycle by Michael Moorcock. As you are no doubt aware, Michael Moorcock's bibliography is enormous, and consequently his oeuvre can be daunting for any reader wishing to begin discovering his cardinally significant works of science fiction, fantasy and mainstream writing. Although I would argue that his most important works are his SF novels and the books that relate closely to his SF, many readers are far more familiar with his reputation as a seminal author of genre fantasy, who brought a new anti-heroic emphasis to sword and sorcery in the early 1960s with his Elric of Melnibone stories. As there are many novels and shorter works in this sequence, with revisions, retitlings and recollections emerging over time, where to begin reading the Elric books can be confusing for neophytes. Although this is arguably the case across his whole immense Eternal Champion sequence, people are always asking, where do I start? As a Moorcock reader for some 45 years, my feeling is that pretty much all of Mike's fiction is connected and it all forms part of the Eternal Champion sequence, whether specifically or in a broader context. I believe that the Elric series is an excellent place to begin discovering this legendary scribe's work. So in today's video, I'm going to suggest an approach that I feel is ideal for the newcomer to ease you into Moorcock's multiverse. Experienced Moorcock readers will also have their own views on this, so please add your comments below after watching this video. The informed opinions that I'm going to offer you today are based on advising my customers on what to read and in what order in my job as a bookseller for the last 40 years. For example, in the 1980s, I would be asked about Moorcock's work every week without fail, sometimes on a daily basis. I'm also basing my opinions upon multiple readings of virtually his entire oeuvre. Incidentally, I'll be meeting up with Mike in Paris in early September to film an interview with him, so if you're not already subscribed to this channel, please do, and you will see that interview here at Outlaw Bookseller in the middle of that month. So first, some background. The first Elric tale, The Dreaming City, appeared in Science Fantasy, a British magazine, in 1961. Elric of Melnibone is the anti-Conan, the slender, sickly albino emperor of Melnibone, a place known as the Dragon Isle, a place that has ruled the world for millennia. The Melniboneans are humanoid, but inhuman, showing fealty to the Lords of Chaos, supernatural beings of infernal aspect whose characters are more diabolic than angelic. Consequently, the Melniboneans are an amoral race of fey-like sorcerers with a culture that has flowered from cold cruelty into senescent decadence as its empire, cold and distant from the other races that are gradually evolving its shadow, begins to show signs of collapse. The dragons, Melnibone's most feared weapons, slumber beneath Imrir, the Dreaming City, and Elric, a curious Melnibonean, atypical of his race, is more interested in questions of philosophy than in entertainments based on torture and debasement. Elric is an outsider in his own throne room and finds himself in conflict with his culture, and in particular with his cousin Urkun, a would-be usurper, and this leads Elric, through sorcery and a perverse desire to pursue his weird, to the discovery of Stormbringer, a sentient sword which drinks the souls of those who find themselves on the point of its sable blade, the energies of these damned unfortunates sustaining Elric's compromised physique, alongside the extensive use of herbal medicines, which he also uses to keep himself as healthy as he could be, and these souls also further feed Elric's patron Chaos Lord, Arioch, the Duke of Hell, the Knight of the Swords. With Stormbringer at his belt, with his diminutive friend Moonglum at his side, Elric ventures beyond Melnibone to explore his changing world and seek answers to the questions few on the Dragon Isle would ever dare to ask. Much daring-do follows, with bewitching women, bizarre monstrosities, ornate magicians, and striking, deeply symbolic MacGuffins seasoning these Quicksilver yarns of swordplay and doom. Elric is a dreamer in the dregs of destiny, a tormented soul enthralled to the malefic, eager to step from his towers of saddened ivory to sail the oceans in ships whose sunken keels take him to his ultimate appointment with a climactic conflict between the forces of law and chaos. As the early Elric stories were initially written for magazines, they have a complex bibliography and a complex publication history, which I'm going to expand on towards the end of this video. But for now, I'm merely going to suggest a reading approach which focuses on the seminal tales and novels, all of which were published before 1973. These stories and novels were first assembled into a self-contained book series for Door in 1977, which comprised 6 volumes, and this assemblage was ported over to the UK paperback editions, which come from Panther Granada Grafton shortly after this, and these were the definitive editions until 1989, when Moorcock began writing new Elric novels, which would gradually be slotted, or not, into the established eternal chronology of the Door Granada editions. This suggested reading order not only represents the books as they were when I first read them, but it also presents the reader with a stylistically coherent reading. So you're reading Elric not only in the correct order, or the internal chronology of the stories, as it should be termed, but in the canonical flavour in which all the early Melnibonean tales were written. This is quite important because later Elric books are often written in different, more sophisticated literary styles, reflecting Moorcock's development as a writer from the late 1970s onwards, and these differences can be jarring for readers who, after getting used to the pacey, direct storytelling of opening volumes like the Elric of Melnibone, they will find the more stately, dreamy approach of a later book like The Fortress of the Pearl perhaps a little disorienting at first. It's also worth noting that even though Moorcock is most famous for his anti-heroic fantasies, much of these were written very quickly to make money to keep New Worlds, the avant-garde new wave SF magazine, afloat, and that was his key professional focus at that time creatively. So, the reading order goes as follows. Elric of Melnibone, the Sailor on the Seas of Fate, the Weird of the White Wolf, the Vanishing Tower, the Bane of the Black Sword, Stormbringer. If read in this order, the new reader will find themselves presented with a pulse-pounding, coherent narrative that unfolds swiftly, evenly and thrillingly, reaching an unforgettable denouement. Now, of course, most of these works have been revised a number of times, but this video is not going to go into detail about revisions, merely suggesting that you read the books in the order stated. Now, many of you will only have omnibus editions, such as the recent Gallery Saga versions, and there's a video about those linked to the end of this one, but I am going to detail here how this running order appears in UK omnibus editions and also in Gallery Saga. I'm doing this because 4 of the 6 books I've just listed were not written as novels, but are instead fix-ups. The books were put together from the magazine stories, not written and published initially as novels. In the omnibuy, these stories are often listed under their original magazine titles, not the book titles that I've listed earlier in this video. So for now, The reader is advised to ignore the other books in the sequence, as they can most comfortably be read afterwards and their diversions in style and approach relished, since you will, after this suggested reading, be familiar with the characters, major events and concepts of the sequence. Also, you'll certainly want to reread these fantastic entertainments in full, and you can comfortably integrate the later novels into the chronologies presented in the Omnibuy. So here goes. Elric of Melnibone. This was written and published as a novel and is presented as such in the Omnibuy. The Sailor on the Seas of Fate. The Weird of the White Wolf in some Omnibuy is broken down into the 3 stories that comprise it: The Dreaming City, While the Gods Laugh, and The Singing Citadel. The Sleeping Sorceress, also known as the Vanishing Tower. The Bane of the Black Sword in some Omnibuy is broken down into the 3 stories which comprise it: The Stealer of Souls, Kings in Darkness, and The Flamebringers, also known as the Caravan of Forgotten Dreams. Finally, Stormbringer. So if you have the Gallery Saga omnibuses, simply pass over Fortress of the Pearl in Volume 1 and Revenge of the Rose in Volume 2. Same goes for the Millennium editions. If you've got those, the early Millennium omnibuses, just pass over those for now. So that suggested reading will give you a great introduction to Elric and the wider cast of the Eternal Champion sequence. So remember, if you buy the books new, then Mike gets the royalties, so please try and buy the in-print editions, and of course they'll also be the most up-to-date revisions from his own fair hand. If, however, you are collecting used copies, you will come across variant title editions from before 1977, which often have different contents too, so we will look at these in brief. The Dreaming City, published by Lancer, is confusingly not a longer version of the eponymous short story, but instead an abridged version of Elric of Melnibone, the first novel in the sequence. The Singing Citadel, from Mayflower, is a collection of 4 novelettes, with the title story being the closing episode of The Weird of the White Wolf. The Stealer of Souls collects 5 Elric stories, all of them incorporated later into The Weird of the White Wolf and The Bane of the Black Sword. The Sleeping Sorceress is the original variant title of The Vanishing Tower. Now these can be fun to collect and enjoyable to read once you have the main sequence under your belt, since you now know the material and can meditate on his tortuous and fascinating publication history prior to 1977. On to the later Elric books. The Citadel of Forgotten Myths, The Fortress of the Pearl, and The Revenge of the Rose were all novels that were written and published long after the main 6-book sequence, yet they do fit into the internal chronology. But for reasons already stated here, the fact that their styles and pace diverge from the feel of the earlier books, I'm not going to cover them here, nor am I going to cover Elric at the End of Time, a novella which is more relevantly discussed within the Dances at the End of Time series. Finally, there's the 21st Century Elric trilogy, The Dream Thief's Daughter, The Skraeling Tree, and The White Wolf's Son, a particular favourite of mine, which cannot comfortably be fit into the original sequence, and should, for reasons again of stylistic continuity, be read separately in my opinion. I think that winds things up for now. There are other Moorcock videos on the channel. There's 3, I think, of me looking over my hardcover collection. There's more to come, so thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this helps you with your reading, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing the various editions I flashed up on the screen. So for now, please subscribe, and do watch the interview with Mike that's coming up in September. Bye for now.